rests with the president, not the Department of Justice, and some of that is pending litigation, and I cannot discuss pending litigation.
Well, I'm not asking you
For your tireless work keeping our country safe, making our country safe. And Governor Landry, thank you for your partnership with the Trump administration to make Louisiana safe and in turn make America safe.
You're not just complicit in this, you're actively helping and profiting. Isn't it true that on April the 2nd, the same day that Trump announced his chaotic tariff regime that plummeted the stock market, you sold more than $1 million worth of your shares in Trump Media stock? Trump Media stock fell 13% in the following days. Seems you avoided that loss. Well done.
In a stunning moment of political drama, Pam Bondi's testimony before Congress revealed shocking truths about her role in the Trump administration. As the tension soared, she was confronted with explosive allegations of financial misconduct, deflections, and emotional breakdowns. The truth behind her actions is far darker than it seems.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere you go because our borders were wide open.
Thank you for bringing that up, and I take that very seriously. Not only what happened in Minnesota was horrible. I've spoken to Keith Ellison. I've spoken to Amy Klobuchar about that. It's horrible. We are involved in that. The FBI was involved. Our U.S. attorneys are involved. Many of these are district to district. So the way we're doing that is, I will tell you, my National Security Division is involved in all of those and assisting in those. We meet every single morning and we discuss that. But many of those, Minnesota, will be handled in the state in which it happened. Another one is Governor. I'm sorry if I can keep going. I'm sorry. I don't mean
quickly,
to.
though.
I filibuster. Governor Shapiro and what happened in Pennsylvania with Governor Shapiro. I've spoken to Governor Shapiro. We are working hand in hand, our U.S. attorney with the district attorney there, hand in hand, just like in Minnesota. I made sure our U.S. attorney and our district attorneys there were working hand in hand. Political party doesn't matter when something like this happens. And I also want to make sure all members of Congress are safe as well.
Okay, and I would reiterate.
Was she protecting her own interests at the expense of the American people? What followed in that hearing would leave the nation questioning not only her integrity, but the very foundations of the administration she once served. In recent months, the actions of certain political figures have come under intense scrutiny. One such figure is Pam Bondi, who has found herself at the center of a controversy involving her financial dealings and her tenure as Attorney General under the Trump administration. The case in point revolves around a significant stock sale that raised more than a few eyebrows. On April 2nd, the same day that Donald Trump introduced his tariff regime, an economic decision that caused a sharp dip in the stock market, Bondi sold over $1 million, 0 cents, worth of her shares in Trump Media. Within days, the stock value dropped by 13%. This sequence of events sparked allegations that Bondi may have deliberately avoided financial loss by timing her sale to coincide with a market downturn. The question of whether this was a mere coincidence or a calculated move is one that has yet to be definitively answered. But this is just the beginning of the story. Bondi's actions and behavior during congressional testimony have added fuel to the fire. The testimony, which focused on alleged misconduct during her time as Attorney General, quickly became a spectacle. When asked direct questions about her involvement in these financial activities, Bondi's response was nothing short of explosive. Rather than addressing the concerns head-on, she reacted with a level of emotion that quickly escalated, leaving many observers questioning her credibility. This public meltdown, which many deemed unprofessional, became the focal point of the session. The line of questioning that triggered Bondi's reaction came from Congressman Mr. Morelli. His questioning was direct and aimed at uncovering the truth behind her financial dealings and the broader implications of those actions. Morelli's approach was thorough, and it left Bondi struggling to maintain control of the narrative. Her inability to answer key questions not only harmed her credibility, but also cast a shadow over the former president, under whom she served, Bondi's failure to address the allegations effectively has raised significant doubts about her ability to navigate such high-stakes situations without resorting to deflection and emotional outbursts. To better understand the implications of Bondi's behavior, it's essential to examine the broader context in which these events took place. The Trump administration, throughout its tenure, was often criticized for its selection of individuals to serve in key positions. Many of these appointments were widely regarded as part of a broader strategy to pack the cabinet with loyalists who were, at times, unqualified or lacking the necessary experience. This trend was seen across various departments, with the American public often bearing the consequences of these decisions. Bondi's testimony exemplified a pattern of dysfunction within the administration. When questioned about her role and the allegations surrounding her, Bondi's response was a textbook example of what many perceived as a deliberate attempt to avoid accountability. Rather than answering the questions directly, she deflected and tried to change the subject. Her emotional outbursts only served to detract from the seriousness of the issues at hand. This type of behavior, unfortunately, was not an isolated incident. Throughout the testimony, Bondi failed to provide clear answers, and instead her responses became increasingly evasive. As a result, her performance only deepened the perception that the administration, under Trump's leadership, was more concerned with deflecting attention from scandals than addressing the underlying issues. Bondi's behavior, in many ways, mirrored the broader dysfunction that plagued the Trump administration, characterized by a lack of transparency, accountability, and a tendency to undermine the very institutions meant to provide checks and balances. One of the central themes that emerged from the questioning was the issue of accountability. Bondi's evasiveness, when confronted with questions about her financial dealings, painted a picture of someone who was more concerned with protecting her own interests than serving the public. In a setting where transparency and honesty are critical, her actions raised alarms about the integrity of those in power. Instead of providing the American people with the answers they deserved, Bondi chose to sidestep the issues and attempt to redirect the conversation elsewhere. The broader implications of these actions are significant. When public officials are unable or unwilling to answer direct questions about their conduct, it erodes public trust. It sends the message that those in power are not held to the same standards as the rest of society. This in turn undermines the foundation of democracy, where accountability and transparency are essential to maintaining a functioning system of government. Bondi's testimony and subsequent meltdown are part of a larger narrative that has unfolded throughout Trump's time in office. From day one, the former president faced numerous allegations of corruption, misconduct, and abuse of power. While many of these allegations were never fully addressed, they created a cloud of suspicion that hung over the administration. The behavior of figures like Bondi only added to the perception that those in power were more concerned with protecting their own interests than upholding the rule of law. In examining the events of April 2nd, it becomes clear that Bondi's financial dealings are not just a matter of personal misconduct. They are a reflection of the broader culture of entitlement and self-interest that permeated the administration. The decision to sell her shares at a time when the market was plummeting raises questions about whether she took advantage of her position to avoid financial loss. While these questions remain unanswered, they speak to a larger issue of ethics and accountability in government. As the investigation into Bondi's actions continues, the public is left to grapple with the larger implications of her testimony and the broader consequences of the Trump administration's decisions. The inability of public officials to be transparent and accountable has far-reaching consequences, not just for those in power, but for the American people as a whole. When those entrusted with public office fail to act in the best interests of the people they serve, it undermines the very principles upon which the nation was built. Ultimately, the questions raised by Bondi's actions are not just about one individual or one administration. They are about the integrity of the entire system of government. As we move forward, it is essential that we continue to hold our public officials to the highest standards of accountability. Only through transparency and honesty can we ensure that those in power are working for the people they represent, rather than for their own personal gain. As the questioning of Pam Bondi continued, it became clear that the issue was no longer just about the alleged financial misconduct. The discussion shifted towards the broader implications of the actions taken by members of the Trump administration, particularly in relation to their roles in the aftermath of January 6th. This shift in focus opened a new chapter in the investigation, one that would question not just the actions of individual figures, but also the administration's stance on law enforcement and the events surrounding the Capitol riot. One of the most significant issues raised during the testimony was the question of pardons. In the wake of the January 6th Capitol riot, several individuals who participated in the insurrection received pardons, some of which were granted by President Trump himself. This raised the question of whether these pardons extended beyond the events of that day to cover other criminal activities committed by those individuals. Congressman Morelli, who had been diligently questioning Bondi, asked her to clarify her stance on the matter, specifically regarding whether the pardons extended to crimes unrelated to January 6th. Bondi's response, however, was less than forthcoming. She deferred to the legal complexities of the pardon power, stating that it was the president's prerogative and that she could not comment on the specifics of ongoing litigation. This answer, while technically correct in terms of legal authority, did little to address the underlying concerns. As the chief law enforcement officer during the Trump administration, her refusal to take a clear stance on such a critical issue raised further questions about her commitment to upholding the law. In the eyes of many, this response seemed like another attempt to deflect and avoid the uncomfortable truths that were being uncovered in the testimony. It became increasingly apparent that Bondi's testimony was not just about defending her own actions, but also about protecting the broader narrative that the Trump administration had attempted to craft in the wake of January 6th. The administration had long struggled to reconcile its support for law enforcement with its defense of individuals who had engaged in violent acts against the government. The conflicting rhetoric, supporting law enforcement while simultaneously defending those who attacked the Capitol, was not only confusing, but also deeply hypocritical. Bondi's testimony mirrored this dissonance. While she spoke at length about the importance of law enforcement and the need to protect members of Congress, her refusal to directly address the issue of pardons for January 6 participants revealed the inconsistency at the heart of the administration's approach. This tension between rhetoric and action was a key theme throughout the testimony, as Bondi repeatedly failed to provide direct answers to questions that would have clarified her position on these critical issues. The political ramifications of the events surrounding January 6th were far-reaching, and Bondi's role in defending the actions of the administration became a focal point. Morelli's questions about the pardons were part of a broader effort to highlight the contradictions in the Trump administration's response to the insurrection. While some members of the administration publicly condemned the actions of the rioters, others worked behind the scenes to protect them, offering pardons and legal immunity. This dual approach not only undermined the legitimacy of the legal system, but also sent a dangerous message about the potential for impunity within the highest levels of government. As the testimony continued, it became clear that Bondi's evasion of direct questions was not just a personal failing, but a reflection of the broader issues within the Trump administration. The repeated deflections, emotional outbursts, and failure to address the core issues only served to highlight the dysfunction that had characterized much of the administration's tenure. This dysfunction was not limited to Bondi's actions, but was indicative of a much larger problem: the lack of accountability and transparency at the highest levels of government. In addition to the issue of pardons, the testimony also touched on the broader question of the role of Congress in overseeing the actions of the executive branch. Bondi's refusal to provide direct answers raised important questions about the effectiveness of congressional oversight in holding government officials accountable. While Congress has the constitutional responsibility to serve as a check on executive power, the testimony revealed that this responsibility had often been undermined by individuals within the administration who were determined to protect their own interests at the expense of the public good. One of the most striking aspects of Bondi's testimony was her repeated invocation of the concept of filibustering. When confronted with difficult questions, she attempted to redirect the conversation, using emotional appeals and deflection tactics to avoid answering the questions directly. This strategy, while not uncommon in high-pressure situations, was particularly striking given the gravity of the issues at hand. Bondi's refusal to engage with the substance of the questions, instead focusing on procedural matters, only deepened the perception that she was more interested in avoiding accountability than in providing the truth. As the testimony drew to a close, the focus shifted to the broader political context. Bondi's actions and her inability to provide satisfactory answers were not just a matter of individual misconduct. They were part of a larger pattern of behavior that had characterized the Trump administration. From day one, the administration had been marked by a lack of transparency and a disregard for the principles of accountability and the rule of law. Bondi's testimony, with its emotional outbursts and evasions, served as a microcosm of this broader issue. It was a reminder that the actions of one individual, while significant, were part of a much larger systemic problem that needed to be addressed. In the final analysis, the events surrounding Pam Bondi's testimony are a stark reminder of the importance of holding public officials accountable for their actions. When individuals in positions of power are allowed to avoid scrutiny, it undermines the integrity of the entire system. Bondi's testimony may have been an emotional spectacle, but it also provided a crucial opportunity to reflect on the broader implications of the Trump administration's actions. The inability of Bondi to answer key questions directly only reinforced the sense that the administration was more focused on protecting its own interests than on serving the American people. As the investigation into these matters continues, the questions raised by Bondi's testimony will not go away. They will continue to haunt the legacy of the Trump administration and serve as a reminder of the challenges that come with maintaining accountability in government. The lessons learned from these events are not just about the actions of one individual. They are about the importance of safeguarding the integrity of democratic institutions and ensuring that those in power are held accountable for their actions. The future of American democracy depends on this commitment to transparency and accountability, and it is up to the American people to ensure that these principles are upheld.